You are God from beginning to the end. There's no place for.
When we're very young, every time you want to leave the house, you will need to take permission from your parents that you want to go somewhere. And your going out will depend on their permission. If you work in an office and you are under a boss, for you to be absent from the work, you will need to take permission. And so there are certain permissions that are required in life. But at the same time, there are certain permissions that you don't need in life. It's so important we know the difference. In the journey into God's plans and purpose for your life, there are certain permissions that are not required for you to make the best out of your life. Now, a child will need permission to leave the house, but that child does not need permission to fulfill destiny. And so you must know the difference between what requires permission and what does not require permission in your journey in life. Take, for example, the story of the man called Joseph. This man did not need the permission of his brothers to get to where he was going to. If he had waited for the permission of his brothers, they wouldn't have given that permission to get to where he was, because they didn't want to hear his dreams at all. They hated him for the dreams. So there was no way he would have been waiting for his brother to fulfill the dreams that God showed him. The story of the woman with the issue of blood. This woman saw an opportunity. She saw that Jesus was passing. She wasn't part of the plan for Jesus' dad. Jesus wasn't looking for her. Jesus was going somewhere else. But if she had waited for the permission of the crowd, there was no way she would have gotten her healing on that day. And so Joseph did not need the permission of his brothers. The woman with the issue of blood did not need the permission of the crowd to get her healing. Daniel was told by everybody, don't pray to any other god. In fact, there was a decree in the land forbidding him to pray. But he went to his house. The Bible says he opened his windows and began to pray. He did not need anyone's permission to pray. And so it's important you understand this concept, that in the journey of life, there are certain permissions that you don't need. If you wait for their permission, you may never become all that God has ordained for you in the journey of life. And so your vision in life is your permission. The revelation of God's plan and purpose for your life is the permission you need to advance in destiny, to become all that God has ordained for you in life. Your faith gives you permission on the earth. Your faith is the permission that you require to move into what God has shown you in His plans and purpose for your life. Your faith is your confidence in God. Your faith is your confidence in the ability of God that is at work in you. And so you don't need anyone's permission to become all that God has created you to become. You don't need that permission in the journey of life. Yes, you need God's permission. There was a story in the Old Testament where David was supposed to go and fight the Amalekites. And so he needed to get God's permission. And so he went to God in prayer. And he said to God, God, should I pursue? Should I go after them? And God said, pursue, you will overtake. At that moment, what he needed was God's permission. And so what you need in your journey of destiny is God's permission over your life. Once God gives you His plans and His purpose for your life, those that did not know what God said to you may not understand what you are doing. And that is all the permission you need in the journey of life. And so what I'm saying today to you today is this: you don't need permission to fulfill purpose. You don't need permission to fulfill destiny. You don't need permission to become all that God has ordained for you in the journey of life. If you wait for that permission, you may wait all your life. If you are waiting for approval of the majority, you may not do anything significant with your life. And so stop waiting for permission. It's unnecessary. And like I said earlier, as a husband, for example, for me to just spend my salary, I need my wife's permission. But for me to do this video, to bless you, I may not need her permission to do that. And so in your journey in life, you must know what requires permission and what does not require permission. Why? Because if you wait for human permission, there are things you may never do in your life. If you are waiting for the permission of circumstances around you, you are waiting for everything to be right before you step out. You may never step out in life. And so your faith is your permission. God's vision for your life is your permission. And once you can get that right, you can step out. You can begin to execute the visions that God has birthed in your heart. God's permission on your life is all you need to step into destiny. Joseph stepped out despite the hatred of his brothers. The woman with the issue of blood, she stepped up for a miracle and she got her healing. Daniel went to his house and began to pray. He didn't need the permission of the majority. All he needed was his time with God. And so today I'm asking you, there's a purpose over your life, there's a destiny ahead of you, and so step into it. If God has shown you, you have the permission to become all that God has ordained for you in the journey of life. I speak over you today. Everything hindering your journey, everything hindering what God has proposed for your life, they are broken today. You will step into purpose. You will step into destiny. You become all that God has ordained for you in life. You be a man and a woman of purpose, a man and a woman of direction, and I will see you in your destiny. God bless you.
You are God from beginning to the end. There's no place for argument.